I'm Michael Bain, and welcome to Triggered, coming to you as always from the secret hidden bunker in the Rocky Mountains Dragon House Studio, and as always brought to you by Midway USA. Just about everything for shooting, hunting, and the outdoors. My good friend Larry Potterfield and Brenda Potterfield are still in Ethiopia chasing exotic antelope. I look forward to the report when they get back. I wanted to talk today about this Ruger, this particular Ruger Gunsight Scout rifle, because this is the rifle that I'm going to take with me down to the Whittington Center sometime in the relatively near future for Jeff Cooper's 101st birthday celebration and Scout rifle class. I'm going to sit in there for a couple of days. This particular Ruger Gunsight Scout is in 6.5 Creedmoor. It was made in 2017. It was a limited run for a distributor, not a regular cataloged item for Ruger. In fact, Ruger catalog Scouts right now, 308 and 350 Legend, 450 Bushmaster. But for a little bit, for a few guns, it was made in 6.5 Creedmoor, and this is one of those guns. I was lucky enough to get it because this gun was actually blemished. When this polymer stock was dipped into this camo pattern, this digitally camo pattern, there was a mistake, it was blemished, and luckily enough Ruger said to me, it's like, hey, we got a blemished one here, you want to buy it? And I did, very quickly. I'll give you the specs first, kind of take you through the gun, and then talk about the elephant in the room, which is it's a short barrel. So, once again, Ruger Gunsight Scout, it differs from the Ruger Gunsight Scout 308, which is the gun that myself, Dave Spalding, Ed Head, Buzz Mills, Ken Jorgensen, all of us had serious input in when it was being put together. But that one has a laminate stock, which is a little heavy. As a lot of you know, especially if you've read Richard Mann's great book on scout rifles, Jeff Cooper saw the scout rifle as about 6.5 pounds with a maximum weight of 7.5 pounds. The Ruger Gunsight Scout starts in 308 with the laminate barrel, starts there. It's up around 7.5, something like that, 8.5 pounds. It's a heavier gun. But then Ruger began producing their own polymer stocks and went right on this rifle. So the weight of the rifle without any accessories on it and unloaded is 7.1 pounds. This gun, as it sits here, is 8.3 pounds, something like that. Specifically, it has an 18.5-inch barrel. It has a flash suppressor, which next time I take this gun hunting, I'll remove the flash suppressors and replace it with some sort of compensator. Probably, I'm fond of DPMS, Jerry Miculek compensators. It'll hurt the people around me, but on the other hand, it makes the rifle a little bit sweeter shooting. Came with a 10-round metal magazine from Ruger, and otherwise it's all within the specs of the stock. You've got this forward-mounted pick rail, which allows you to forward mount the scope, which is the signature of a scout rifle. You've also got backup peeps and front sights, so if I were to pop this scope off, I would still have the sights. It is sighted in with these peep sights. I sight in first with the peep and then put the scope on it. Now this scope is one of my all-time favorite scopes and my favorite scope for a scout rifle, and predictably, it is no longer made. Been discontinued a couple of 3 years. It's a Leupold VXR Scout 1.5 to 5, and it was illuminated, which was critical to me. And you can make a case, and if you're Richard Mann, you make that case every time he mentions this scope. It's not really a scout scope. It's a slightly extended eye relief scope. Typically a scout scope would have much more eye relief. If you took, say, one of the Burris 2X Scouts or a Leupold 4X Scout and mounted it on here, it would come right about to here. And the critical point on this scope, and why Richard Mann would say it's not a scout scope, don't even say it's one, even though it says it on the scope, is it covers a portion of the opening there. The danger was, at least according to Cooper, that if the scope extended back over the action, then you could probably have a problem on ejection, or you would have a problem inserting a single round into it for firing. I've shot this scope on 2 different rifles, including my 308 that I went to Africa with, and actually one of the lever guns. And I've never had the slightest bit of trouble with that. It doesn't seem to be a problem. Seekins Precision rings, they're very good rings. I like them a lot. It's scoped down pretty far. So you're looking at this, you're going, that's a pretty nice gun. Why isn't it in the catalog anymore? And I think the safe answer to that would be barrel length. You know, we talk about American shooters as having a certain set of quirks. And European shooters also have quirks. You know, African shooters have quirks. They're just different. But if you wanted to say, what are the quirks of American shooters? Well, one of them is magnification on the scope. Bigger, 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 bigger. You got a 3 to 9x, put it to 11, just like in Spinal Tap. You want as much magnification as you can get. The second quirk has to do with velocity. And if I could sum up kind of Americans' thinking, more velocity is better, which is generally true. However, the way you get more velocity oftentimes mandates a longer barrel. Remember, this is an 18.5-inch barrel. When Hornady did the original development on the 6.5 Creedmoor and the ELD bullet, they did it in a 28-inch barrel. And then eventually came back and gave you on the box the velocity for a 26-inch barrel because nobody had 28-inch barrels. So keep that in mind. Americans say, I want more velocity. To get more velocity, I'm either going to have to drastically overload the cartridge, as my father, rest his soul, was always fond of doing, or you're going to have to add length to the barrel. We'll talk about that more when we come back.
The revolutionary TCM from Rock Island Armory. Fire it once and you'll be hooked. The first thing you'll notice is its sonic boom and enormous muzzle flash as it hurls the exclusive Armscore 22 TCM round downrange at a blistering 2,000 feet per second with penetrating impact. It shoots surprisingly easy with light recoil. The 17-round TCM series, so fun to shoot, it's like a thrill ride, only better.
Welcome back to Triggered, where today we're talking about this 6.5 Creedmoor Ruger Gunsight Scout rifle that I'm going to be using, I think, next month down at the Whittington Center. Richard Mann and I, as you know, my running buddy Richard Mann, you read his stuff all the time in Field and Stream, you know, lots of other magazines. A super knowledgeable guy. Richard and I are in Africa, and we're doing the second Scout Rifle Safari. Of course, Colonel Cooper did the first Scout Rifle Safari, and Richard and I decided we should do the second Scout Rifle Safari. We bought a bunch of our friends from Gunsight, went to South Africa, had a great time. Everybody was shooting 308 Scout rifles and Hornady 178 grain ELDX, okay? So everybody's shooting 16.5-inch barrel. We're sitting there one night around the campfire, and Richard says to me, he goes, hey, Bain, what would you think about a 6.5 Creedmoor Scout? And I sat there for a minute and I said, well, damn, Richard, aren't we going to lose too much velocity going from, say, a 24, 26-inch barrel down to an 18-inch barrel or a 16-inch barrel? To which Richard replied, I'll bet you said exactly the same thing about a short barrel 308. And it kind of stopped me for a minute because I did. But he said, until all you guys with your ARs started shooting AR-10, 308 AR-10s out of a 16.5-inch barrel, you could pick up any gun magazine. There would be these huge articles on how much velocity you're going to lose on a 308 if you chop the barrel. And are you going to lose velocity on a 308? Are you going to lose velocity on a 6.5 Creed? Yeah. But as Richard said, he goes, second question, yes, you lose velocity, but does it matter? And that's where Richard actually honed in on it. The question is what you want the rifle to do. And generally, you have some reason for the specs that you would put on a rifle. I want more velocity out of a 28-inch barrel because I'm shooting at 1,000 yards, 1,200 yards, 1,500 yards. I need everything I can get. But if I'm taking a Creedmoor into the field and I have hunting rifles in 6.5 Creedmoor, 24, 22-inch barrels on them, Ruger and Montana rifle. But for a gun like this, what we found with the Scouts in Africa and what we found in Ed Head's classes at Gunsight are quite simply that the utility of the shorter barrel rifle outweighs the loss of velocity. And you're going like, well, what about when you shoot an animal with it? Once again, what about that? Shooting in Africa on 308s out of 16.5-inch barrels, we routinely shot out to 500 yards. Everybody connected with the animals fell down dead. with the 6.5 Creedmoor, I've hunted deer with it in Texas on my longer barreled Ruger, and it's like a lightning bolt. It hits them, they fall down. Richard said, if you think about it in terms of what you would like the rifle to do, 6.5 Creedmoor makes a lot of sense for a couple of reasons. He goes, number one, what's the recoil in comparison to the 308? So I don't know, 60%, maybe 40% less recoil with the 6.5 on 140 grain, 143 grain bullet over a 308 running 168, 178 grain bullet. He goes, yeah. And he goes, so let's say you launch that 140, 143 grain bullet out of there at 2,700 feet per second out of a 26-inch barrel, and you lop it down to an 18-inch barrel. What are you out? 100, 125, 150 feet per second? In your experience, has that made any difference at all in the field? I said, no. And he goes, nor has it in mine. And he goes, I think we can safely say that the loss of that 150, 200 feet per second comes out as inconsequential. The advantage, though, is typically the 6.5 can buck the wind a little bit better. It's a little bit better with wind drift when you get out further. And so I thought it was a really great idea for a rifle. And I got this one, and then you know what I did with it? I shot it some, and I put it in my safe. And I didn't think anything of it until I was going to FTW months ago, last year maybe, into last year. And they said, hey, bring something fun to shoot. Bring a couple of your fun rifles. This is not like a training class where you got to get down and dirty, but bring something interesting. So I bought a couple of my lever guns, big bore lever guns, but I also bought this. I took this scope off my 308 Scout, put it on this, sighted it in, took it to FTW. And the more I shot it at FTW, and the more the guys at FTW shot it, and we were shooting this round right here. This is a Hornady 143 grain Precision Hunter ELDX bullet. And the more we shot it, the more we thought, this is like weirdly accurate. And the guys at FTW are used to scopes, like manly scopes this big. So when they would look, Doug Pritchard, his chief instructor there, Dog from the SEAL teams, he looked at this scope and he goes, that's a really little scope, Michael. Did you get it off of 22? But so we shot it, and the more we shot it, the more we thought, this is kind of a nice little rifle. It's not beating you up. It's not hitting you really hard. It's shooting good initially. You get 100 yards, it's shooting MOA, a little less than an MOA. And that's without fiddling and dancing and jumping up and down. That's putting a bipod on it, going prime, shooting at 100 yards. So I took this rifle out to one of their courses. It's a field course. And it involves, essentially, it's on a steep, we've talked about this a little before, it's on a really steep cliff, lots of rocks, really broken footing. And what they've done at FTW, they've gone through and they've cut down cedar trees all along this field course. And the trees fell. They fell all over the place. So they said, you want to really run this thing? The closest target is, I think, 230, 250. They're 9-inch plates, and they anywhere from 230, 240 yards out to 385 yards. He goes, Doug said, why don't you give it a shot, dude? So I ran this up to 5X, the illumination down really low, and I ran the stage. And the first time I ran it, I cleaned it. That is one plate per shot. Regardless of whether it's 230, 385 yards. And Doug looked through the scope and he goes, 9-inch plates are really small with 5X magnification. So the short story is, this is a much better rifle than I thought it was. Accurate, no recoil, powerful cartridge. I'm looking forward to having it at Whittington Center. When we come back, even more things right here on Triggered, brought to you by Midway USA.
This week's Triggered is brought to you by Midway USA. Just about everything for shooting, hunting, and the outdoors. Taurus USA, designed to protect. Rock Island Arms Corps, solid as a rock. Volquartsen, engineering the world's finest rimfire rifles, pistols, and parts. And Franklin Armory, making some of the most innovative guns in America.
Remember a few weeks ago, we showed you the Ruger Max 9, Ruger's entry into the little bitty larger capacity 9mm carry gun sweepstakes. And that's this little Ruger right here. Well, I'm always looking out for you. I'm always looking out for you for deals on new products, things that seem to work pretty well. And about 3 or 4 weeks ago, a friend of mine said, "Hey, Michael, have you done anything with Swamp Fox optics?" I said, "No. Why?" And he goes, "Well, they're real good." He goes, "I've got one of their dots, and I like it a lot." And he goes, "I believe they're down in the Denver area, so they're homies to you." So I called up Swamp Fox, talked to their VP marketing at some length. We ended up having a couple of great conversations. We just really hit it off. And I said, "I tell you what, let me go buy a site." I just go to Optics Planet, go to Midway USA. My first choice, Midway. They don't have Swamp Fox yet. I went to Optics Planet and bought it there. This is their Sentinel. It is a small red dot specifically for subcompact carry pistols. It's equivalent of, say, the SIG Romeo Zero that you see a lot of. Also equivalent to the Shield, the RMSC, which are European site, made in England. Great site's been making them forever. The Trijicon RMSCC, the Holosun, which I don't have. I'm going to go ahead and order one of the Holosuns because I hear nothing but great about it. And I do love the Holosun that I have on my Polymer 80 G34-ish gun that we're going to be shooting in Florida at the gun makers competition. I love that Holosun. So I'm going to get a smaller Holosun and see how much I love it. But so I ordered the Sentinel, and this particular one, you can get 2 flavors. You can get one that automatically adjusts to the room, or you can get this one, which is you adjust the red dot to the light that you particularly want. I like that because my experience has been with a sight that adjusts itself. It never seems to adjust it exactly where I would have adjusted it if I'd been pushing the buttons on it. So, and especially in a competition gun, if you're going to shoot a gun in competition, you need to control the dot, because you're going to have to make some decisions on how bright or how dim you want that dot. So this is one of the Sentinels. I think it's a 3.4 MOA, but it will sit right here. And I will bolt it in and give it a shot. And like I said, I like the build of it. It's a very sturdy build, I think aluminum sight here. The other thing is one of the things the guys at Sentinel mentioned, or the guys at Swamp Fox mentioned to me, is they also make armor for it. You can get a special kind of aluminum metal cap around it. So if you plan to really beat the crap out of it, which generally I do with red dot sights, you can armor it up. It comes with, I think, a really great adjustment tool. Thank you very much, Swamp Fox. I like the idea of having some way, an easy tool like this to adjust it. On some of my little red dot sights, I have in my cabinet where I keep my adjustable Allen wrenches for these sights. I have big pieces of tape on them that says RMSC or SIG Zero. This one, you'll be hard to mistake it for Swamp Fox. The other thing I just wanted to say about Swamp Fox is they sent you this whole sack of different screws, which, thank you. Because it seems to me that sometimes when people say, well, it's standard cut. This is what you would call a standard J point or JP cut on it, which will fit the JP sights. It will fit the Shield and fit the Zero and fit pretty much everything but the Trijicon CC, which carries its own specific pattern. But that does not necessarily mean that the holes are drilled to the same size screw. And I found that happen a couple of different times where I have the screws and I have the gun and the sight fits right in, happy, happy, joy, 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 except the screw's a little different. And I have to go root around. I have big boxes of screws that I purchased from Midway just because I want to be able to mount stuff to it. So I really think it is really super deluxe that the guys at Swamp Fox threw in a great big thing of screws because you may need them. So I'll probably put this on and we'll get some pictures of it. You'll see them, here you'll see them. We'll talk about it on the podcast. But on the whole, I'm looking forward to it. The dot looks good. It's a very concise red dot. It's very specifically circular red dot. Again, this is a $239 sight. And so when you get in the $200 range in sights, sometimes you can have a red dot that's not necessarily a red dot. It's sort of a red thing, like a splotch. But this, the Swamp Fox Sentinel, very, very good. It loads battery from the bottom. I have never found that to be a problem, just like the original Trijicon RMR, which I have lots of. I have found that once it's zeroed, when I take it off, replace the battery on a Trijicon, put it back on, it doesn't change zero. Not that big a deal. If you want a very precise small sight, you're going to have a battery on the bottom pretty much. So looking forward to doing this, working with a new red dot. And they also have some low power variable optics we're going to talk about. But coming up, I'm working on my Marlin Dark 336 Dark and 3030. Hopefully, I found this great stock for it. It's in England, and it seems that England's gotten farther away in COVID. They've sent it to me once. It never showed up. You know, it went back to them. They sent it to me again. I'm hoping one day it shows up, but I want to be working on that a little bit. I got some other pistols that I'm picking up very soon. So, hey, I am Michael Bain. This is Triggered. You can always find us on michaelbain.tv. And by the way, when you're on michaelbain.tv, check out our special from last week, which is Ed Monk, Tom Givens on active shooters. Incredible interview. You're not going to want to miss that. You can also find us on YouTube. When you do find us on YouTube, voila, you can watch us on your big screen television. I got an email today from a guy who said he was watching, well, last night, he was watching President, what is that man's name? Anyway, the thief that's right now sitting in the White House, they were watching him do a speech to Congress, and he became nauseous. And luckily, my friend was able to tune to Triggered on YouTube and be able to see it. So you can see us on the big screen. As always, we are brought to you by Midway USA. Just about everything for shooting, hunting, and the outdoors, and we will see you next week.